Welcome to Grab and Go episode 10. For the next 3 weeks, I will talk about the Book of Leviticus. Today I'm going to give you a brief introduction about the background of the Book of Leviticus. The title of the Book of Leviticus is Vayikra in Hebrew. It means, then the Lord called. The Book of Leviticus begins with God's calling. Then the Lord called to Moses and spoke to him from the tent of meeting. Then the Lord called. When was then? When did God call to Moses? God called Moses after the Israelites finished building the tent of meeting, tabernacle. In order to understand what was going on in Leviticus, we need to understand what happened before in the book of Exodus. I owe a lot of thanks to Rappel, who wrote Blood, Guts, and Fire. This book has tremendously helped me to deepen my understanding on the book of Leviticus. Fast backward. Exodus chapter 1, verses 11 through 14. So the Egyptians made the Israelites their slaves. They appointed brutal slave masters over them to oppress them with a crushing labor. They forced them to build the cities of Pithom and Ramesses as supply centers for the king. But the more the Egyptians oppressed them, the more the Israelites multiplied and spread, and the more alarmed the Egyptians became. So the Egyptians worked the people of Israel without mercy. They made their lives bitter, forcing them to mix mortar and make bricks and do all the work in the fields. They were ruthless in all their demands. The Egyptians made the Israelites their slaves. They worked the people of Israel without mercy, with no mercy. They made their lives bitter. They were ruthless in all their demands. The Egyptian people used the Jewish people. Humans used other humans. Rappel claims, quote unquote, you use a tool, you use a car, you use things. You don't use people. But here you see humans used other humans ruthlessly. It was obviously a dehumanizing experience. This was the way Egypt was ordered. Some were on top and others were on the bottom. Some were free and some were enslaved. And there was no way the Israelites changed it. It was what it was. Even the deity, the gods, didn't care. Under this circumstance, all the people of Israel could do was crying out. In Exodus chapter 2, verses 23 and 24, the Bible says, the Israelites groaned in their slavery and cried out. And their cry for help because of their slavery went up to God. God heard their cry of grief. Yahweh God heard their cry. While the gods in the land of Egypt allowed the people to use other people, while the gods condoned the order of oppressing and dehumanizing, Yahweh God heard the cry of the oppressed and decided to rescue them from the slavery. And God sent Moses and his brother Aaron to set the oppressed free from the oppressors. God liberated the enslaved from the slavery. Let me pause here and ask you a question. Is there anything enslave you? Does money enslave you? Does any form of addictions enslave you? Does your use of cigarettes, alcohol, and/or drugs enslave you? Does your desire to watch porn and to have irresponsible sex enslave you? Does your temper problem enslave you? Does your selfishness, ego, narcissism enslave you? What burdens you so that you cannot enjoy the freedom from God? If you are enslaved by anything, cry out to God first. Cry out to God, and God will hear your cry. God will empower you to make decisions to stay away from those things and to focus on God's love and power for you. God will liberate you from those toxic things. I believe this is why the first step of 12-step program is, quote unquote, we admitted we're powerless over alcohol or drugs, that our lives had become unmanageable. The Israelites cried out, and God heard their cry. God set them free from the slavery in Egypt. Moreover, God decided to dwell among them. That was why God commanded Moses to build the tent of meeting, tabernacle. From chapter 35 through 40, the Israelites built the tent of meeting in the exact way that the Lord commanded Moses. And finally, they finished the work. Then the Lord called to Moses and spoke to him from the tent of meeting. This is the beginning of Leviticus. This is the beginning of Vayikra, which literally means, then the Lord called. And the first thing God wanted the Israelites to do was bring offerings. In the first 7 chapters, you find 5 offerings. In Hebrew, they are called Olah, Minha, Shalamim, Hatat, and Asham. Olah is a burnt offering. Minha is a grain offering. Shalamim is the fellowship or peace offering. Hatat is the sin offering. And Asham is the guilt offerings. The God of grace heard the cry of the Israelites when they were oppressed and suffered. And God set them free from the slavery. After saving them from the land of oppression, the God of love wanted them to experience God's loving and intimate presence with them all the time. So God had the Israelites build the tent of meeting for God to dwell among them. Then God called Moses. And then through Moses, God told the Israelites, the former slaves, to bring offerings. After all those God's actions of grace and love, the first thing God wanted the Israelites to do was bring offerings. Isn't it weird? What does God's grace and love have to do with the offerings? As I read the first 7 chapters of the book of Leviticus again and again, and meditated on them, I learned 2 amazing reasons that it was bringing offerings that the God of grace and love told the Israelites, the former slaves, to do first, right after saving them. And I will talk about the first reason in episode 11 next week. If you have any questions or comments on this Grab and Go episode 10, the background of the book of Leviticus, please put them in the comment section below. See you next week. So long.